Putin deployed over 110,000 soldiers to the Luhansk axis to take Donbass, more than 1,000 tanks, hundreds of artillery systems, thousands of armored vehicles. This massive army's objective was to advance westward from Luhansk to break through the Slavyansk and Kramatorsk line and envelop the fortress belt from the north. But to keep this enormous force in the field, he first had to feed it. Fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts, reinforcements, and all of it came through a single route, the railway network stretching from Rostov and Kursk to Luhansk. An army condemned to a single logistics option becomes entirely predictable. Its weak point becomes visible. Ukraine began systematically targeting exactly this weak point, the railways. On the night of May 23rd, the SBU and the Unmanned Systems Forces struck 5 critical logistics nodes on this line simultaneously. Fuel trains, ammunition depots, drone repair bases, communications infrastructure, and troop staging areas. And the strikes did not remain confined to occupied territory. A day later, they began targeting trains on Russian soil itself. A simultaneous strike at this scale is operationally extremely challenging. Reaching 5 different targets at the same time requires drones to launch from different bases in flight durations calculated to minute-level precision for synchronized arrival at the target zone. The 2 most distant targets on the list are 80 kilometers apart, but both must be reached at the same minute. Like an orchestra conductor, each instrument enters at a different moment, but they all meet on the same note. This coordination is run by the Deep Strike Command Center, established in early 2026. Real-time intelligence, target approval, and strike execution under one roof. But first, the locations of the targets had to be known. Russia was trying to protect this line. The railway lines from Kursk, Belgorod, and Rostov converge at Luhansk, and from there extend south to Mariupol, Berdansk, and Crimea. Like the main artery in a body, the single line connecting the heart to the front.
Pancia S1 e Torm M2 Air Defense Systems avevano deployato a critical nodes. Camouflage netting avevano pulto sopra depots. Fuel trains verano mosse durante il giorno e unloadate a notte.
CASA 4 and Pol 21 electronic warfare systems had been placed at junctions to jam GPS signals. Supply points were no longer fixed. The same depot changed location every 3 to 5 days.
But every time Russia changed locations, the Atesh Partisan Network, a resistance organization operating in cell structure under occupation, like nerve endings, detected the new position and relayed it to the SPU.
A camouflage net can hide a depot from satellites, but it cannot hide it from an ATE agent who walks past the depot every day.
When the SBU's Donetsk-Luhansk intelligence officers combined this field source data with satellite imagery and signals intelligence, Russia's entire protection effort was rendered futile. Wherever a pantsir was deployed, its coordinates were known.
Wherever a Krisa was set up, its frequency was recorded. Targets identified, coordinates ready. Now it was the strike platform's turn. Firepoint 2, a 105-kilogram warhead, powerful enough to set a fuel depot ablaze in a single hit, 200 kilometers range.
Not dependent on GPS, signal-silent autonomous navigation, is immune to Kursa and Pol 21 and invisible to passive detection systems. The drones fly at low altitude, treetop level, staying below the detection threshold of Pantsir and Toyu radars.
A small radar cross-section and composite body further reduce the radar signature. Night and thermal vision is critical because Russia keeps depot under blackout, but a fuel depot's heat signature is far more visible at night.
And when 5 targets are attacked simultaneously, point defense systems are forced to split. A goalkeeper cannot save 5 penalties at the same time.
In the published footage of the operation, drones can be seen detecting targets with thermal cameras and executing strikes in rapid succession. According to Ukraine Inform, the fuel depot in Luhansk, the ammunition depot in Kadivka, and the drone repair base in Bilokurin were struck minutes apart. You press 5 points at the same time with 5 fingers, and each one hurts simultaneously.
The SBU reported over 80 Russian casualties. The scale of the fires is evident from commercial satellite systems recording multiple heat sources over Luhansk. A day later, the strikes jumped to Russian territory.
In Kursk's Olgov district, 2 drones hit a freight train carrying propane tankers. Olgov is not an ordinary town. It is the key transfer point on the railway running south from Kursk, 60 to 70 kilometers behind the front line, at the depth Russia had planned as its safe rear area.
A significant portion of the fuel and ammunition heading to Luhansk passed through this junction. When the propane tankers were hit, the gas explosion created a massive column of fire above the town. According to local sources, the blast was heard several kilometers away, and 76 civilians had to be evacuated. Governor Kinstein was forced to confirm the incident.
The Kremlin generally downplays or ignores strikes on domestic territory, and the governor's obligation to make a statement indicates the damage was too large to conceal. The strike on Albagov carries a different message than May 23rd.
The targets in Luhansk were in occupied territory, expected, but Algo is on Russian Federation soil. This strike sends the supply chain a message: your rear is not safe. Railway planners now have to factor transfer points hundreds of kilometers behind the lines into their risk calculations. Supply routes lengthen, transit time increases, costs rise, and every new route means a new target list. And Algo was not the first. In March, Major Medyar's unit struck a fuel train in the same area. Negative fuel-free supply continues in Luhansk. That same month, Akwesh destroyed a relay cabinet on the same line. The equipment burned completely. Rapid repair is not possible. Defense Express's analysis reveals a striking picture. In the first 5 months of 2026, the number of fuel trains struck by Ukraine exceeded the entire total for 2025. This is not drip by drip. The tap is open, and the flow is getting stronger. The numbers behind these strikes are impressive. The real question is, how do these strikes affect the daily functioning of a 110,000-strong army? 110,000 soldiers consume approximately 3,000 tons of supplies per day, an average of 80 to 100 railway wagons worth. When an echelon and multiple fuel depots are destroyed in a single night, 30 to 40% of this flow stops within hours. Russian command enters a 7 to 10-day bottleneck, and the buffer shrinks with every new strike. At the first strike, there are 10 days of reserves. At the third, 3 days. At the fifth, 0. The battlefield effect of this bottleneck spares no unit type. A T-72 burns 260 liters of fuel per hour. When fuel is cut, it sits pinned in place, cannot flee from drones, cannot maneuver when surrounded by infantry. Over 1,000 tanks become stationary metal coffins. The picture for artillery is even grimmer. A grad survival tactic is shoot and scoot. But when fuel runs out, hundreds of artillery pieces sit pinned where they fired. And the infantry soldiers in the trenches are waiting for ammunition and food, but resupply trucks cannot move. Casualty evacuation also stops. Armored medical vehicles are out of fuel. The thought, if I'm wounded, no one may come, fundamentally shakes a soldier's will to fight. But the most devastating effect emerges at the command level. Gasimov's plan was clear: break through the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk line with 110,000 soldiers. Envelope the fortress belt from the north. Deliver Putin the promise of Donbass by autumn. The plan still exists on paper. Units deployed, orders issued. But the plan on paper finds no correspondence on the ground, because the artery feeding 110,000 soldiers is being cut. Generals issue attack orders. The units are without fuel, without ammunition, hungry. The order comes, it cannot be executed. The arrows on the map point forward, but on the ground, nothing is moving. The tension this helplessness creates at the command level can be read between the lines of Rybar and other mill bloggers. When Rybar says, "the leadership's lies," this is exactly what he means. The offensive is continuing, is reported to the Kremlin, while on the ground, units cannot even change positions. When a general issues an attack order,
Executing it requires at minimum 48 hours of fuel stock, 72 hours of ammunition reserve, and an active evacuation chain. When any of these three is missing, the attack remains on paper, and Ukraine's railway campaign targets all three simultaneously. The broader strategic picture is equally heavy. While Ukraine's pressure is paralyzing Russia's offensive capacity, it is simultaneously eroding its defensive capacity. Units cut off from logistics cannot change positions, cannot receive reinforcements. At the points where Ukraine plans counterattacks, the defense line remains thin and fragile. 110,000 soldiers are still there, but if they are not fed, that number becomes not an advantage but a burden. An army that cannot be fed cannot fight. An army that cannot fight must retreat, and an army that has no fuel to retreat with simply erodes in place. So what can Russia do? The answer is more limited than one might think. The first option is switching to roads. But transporting the daily needs of 110,000 soldiers by truck requires a massive fleet, and every truck on an open road is a potential target. The field depots struck in the Luhansk operation were already part of this alternative. When Russia tried to shift from rail to road, it set up new depots, and Ukraine struck those too. Building alternatives just creates new targets. The second option is changing routes, but the Kupiansk junction is in Ukrainian hands. Southern lines are at capacity, and every new route carries the risk of detection. Russia's 28,500 strong railway troops can repair tracks within hours, but Ukraine's drones are now targeting the repair crews too. Thermal sensors detect crews working at night, and strikes arrive before repairs are complete. Speed lowers quality. Hastily completed repairs sustain damage again sooner. The result is a Sisyphean cycle. Russia repairs, Ukraine strikes. With each cycle, the interval shortens. And the reason it shortens is production imbalance. Firepoint alone produces 200 drones per day, provides approximately 60% of all Ukraine's deep strikes, at a unit cost of $55,000. Russia's imported Shahed costs $150,000, 3 times more expensive, slower, dependent on external supply. Moreover, Firepoint has over 50 distributed manufacturing sites. Even if you strike one factory, production continues. The third option is strengthening defenses. More air defense, more electronic warfare, but this means pulling a resource from somewhere else. When an air defense system is pulled from the front to protect the railway, frontline units become more vulnerable to air threats. Russia faces a blanket dilemma. When you cover one spot, another is exposed. And the fourth possibility, Russia targeting Ukraine's deep strike infrastructure. But Firepoint's 50-plus factories are distributed. ANASH operates in cell structure, and the deep strike command center's location is classified. Even if Russia wanted to counterstrike, it does not know what to hit. This information asymmetry is one of Ukraine's greatest advantages. None of Russia's current options solve the problem. They all transform it into a different form. This is not a dead end, but it is a corridor whose exit is narrowing. This campaign is not one-dimensional. Russia's logistics spine is being cut from 4 different points simultaneously. The first scissors came from the north. With the fall of Kupiansk, the northern rail junction passed into Ukrainian hands. Russia's Plan B alternative supply route was closed. The main line to Luhansk narrowed. No backup route remained. The second scissors are working at the front. The offensive at Liman collapsed. Advance stopped, but resource consumption did not. Russia is expending soldiers and ammunition in the Liman direction every day, gaining no territory in return. Consumption continues, there is no return, and this keeps compounding the logistics pressure. The third scissors are working from the air. The SBU and unmanned systems forces are systematically burning fuel depots, ammunition stocks, and drone repair bases 150 kilometers behind the lines. According to Totni Oint data, deep strike count reached 354 in March 2026, nearly double the previous period. Strike range has increased to 2.5 times what it was at the start of the war. Even Perm, 1,700 kilometers away, is now within range, and the Fourth Scissors are working from underground.
The Atesh partisan network is systematically sabotaging railway infrastructure in occupied territories. Rail cabinets, signal boxes, railway switches, fiber optic cables. The effect of these sabotage operations differs from drone strikes.
When a drone breaks a rail, the railway troops can repair it within hours, but replacing a signal box or relay cabinet takes days or even weeks because spare parts production is limited, and each component requires specialized calibration.
Akash's greatest advantage is its invisibility. It operates in cell structure, decentralized, extremely difficult for Russian counterintelligence to detect.
Russia is deploying security personnel to protect the railway, but physically guarding every point along thousands of kilometers of track is not possible. Drones strike from above. Atesh tears apart from below. The line these four scissors are cutting does not feed only Luhansk. It also affects the logistics chain extending south. The same railway network's southern branches extend to Crimea via Mariupol, Berdansk, and Mariupol.
When northern junctions are struck, resupply heading south also contracts. The rationing of gasoline with coupons in Crimea and the formation of fuel queues in Sevastopol are the indirect but tangible consequence of this pressure.
Ukraine is strangling Russia's logistic spine from both north and south. Cutting a single line creates local impact, but when multiple lines are cut simultaneously, the effect multiplies. Ukraine is effectively placing occupied territories under blockade. With this pressure, garrisons cut off from logistics cannot receive reinforcements, ammunition stocks diminish, morale drops. This is the 21st century version of classical siege logic. Instead of encircling the city, you strangle the supply lines.
Syrski's mid-May statement confirms this. For the first time, we attacked more than they did. This is no coincidence. There is a direct link between logistic strangulation and the shift of initiative on the front. This blockade effect extends beyond the front.
It is seeping into Russia's own streets. The four scissors cutting the logistics spine are directly hitting Russia's energy infrastructure. In April, 14 refineries were struck. The Moscow and Ryazan refineries were forced to halt production.
Russia banned gasoline exports, but cannot balance the domestic market either. In Moscow, Smolensk, and Saratov, the daily gasoline purchase limit was reduced to 10 liters. The country that exports energy to the world cannot provide sufficient fuel to its own people. The agricultural sector cannot find diesel for harvest. Transport companies are canceling routes. Prices are climbing. Black marketeers are selling at 3 to 4 times the official price. It is important to see the connection between this pressure and the front. The logistics line cut by the four scissors does not carry only military supplies. The same railway network also carries civilian fuel, food, and raw materials. The spillover of strikes targeting military objectives into the civilian economy is unavoidable. And this spillover is straining the Kremlin's domestic political calculations. Zelensky describes these operations as long-range sanctions, applying economic pressure through military force.
Putin on one side is pushing his generals' promise of Donbass by autumn at the front, while on the other side, his people are growing impatient in gasoline queues. The cost of war is no longer measured only at the front.
If this content interested you, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and follow the